Welcome to our first official content episode of The Bar's Ankle High. So exciting.
So exciting.
It's a big day. You'll be hearing this and our first 3 episodes, really, dropping all on September 1st. I am Garrett.
I'm Katie.
And today we are going to start the first in a multi-part series talking about ADHD, which is kind of how this was born.
Yes.
The origin story.
Before we start, though, I have a surprise for you.
You do? You have a surprise? What
Yes.
is it?
I'm so excited.
She can't reach it. There's so many.
I know.
Oh my god, guys, there's so many stickers here. Oh, they look so good.
Right? I have one on my laptop, and I was trying really hard to hide it. No, I had my phone over it and then my hand, and I was like, nobody can see. It's a secret.
I'm just going to close this laptop. Oh my god. These are amazing.
Yeah.
I can't wait to put them on things.
Yeah.
Here.
I'm very excited. I left a couple on a table at Panera today, so some old person
Find us is going to be like, what is this garbage? And then
This
throw it
is
out.
graffiti.
These millennials leaving their garbage.
So
Graffiti.
guys,
Graffiti.
we have stickers. You can join our Patreon if you want one right away.
Oh yeah, the moral of that story was we have stickers. I don't think I expressed myself very well because I'm forgetting that no one can see us.
Yes.
So when
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
excited about something tangible, I need to describe it.
We'll post a picture on our social medias of them. They look super duper cute,
They're so
I think, as the person who designed them.
Excellent. I don't know who designed these, but they did great work.
Oh, you're too kind.
Hair flip.
But yeah, so anyway, back to the content.
Yes. So, yes, back to our ADHD. I mean, it's funny because we're recording this podcast talking about ADHD, and it's becoming painfully clear to both of us just how many of these symptoms we struggle with. There's a lot of things. Before I would read the list, and I'm like, kind of, of symptoms, like things I relate to and things I don't, and now it's, oh.
Yes. Yeah, I had that more than once, I'll be honest. Didn't care for it.
Unsubscribe.
Yes. Yes.
From any further revelations.
Heavily dislike.
So one of the things we want to do is kind of break down, I guess, the hallmark symptoms, some of the big symptoms, kind of talk about our experience with them. One of the things that I've learned in this process that I was diagnosed 6 years ago, and there's just so much more information, especially about adults as opposed to kids. ADD used to be ADD and ADHD, which now fall under the ADHD umbrella. And there's 3 different types. There's inattentive, hyperactive, and there's also combined, where you have symptoms of both. And the hyperactive being like restlessness and compulsive behavior, impulsive behavior, being impatient, which...
Who's that?
I don't know anybody that's ever impatient. It's certainly not me.
It's definitely Garrett, guys. Garrett's very bad at being patient.
Very little patience at any point. I actually have a workout tank top that says thick thighs, thin patience. So yes, I turns out am impatient. Disorganized type. So they kind of had disorganized and inattentive lumped in interchangeably. Running late, procrastinating, wandering thoughts, anxiety, which a lot of times is lumped up in that procrastination tendency. And then obviously the combined, where you have symptoms of both, which, as it turns out, I have symptoms of both. How about you?
I would say that I have symptoms of both. What surprised me was how many hyperactive symptoms I have rather than just inattentive.
Yes.
Because
Same.
As a child, again, I'm always comparing it to my brother's presentation, where my brother really did have difficulty sitting still and finishing a single task. Whereas as a child, I mean, my way of measuring my ability to focus on a single task was like completing my homework for school.
Right.
And I really never forgot my homework at home, so I didn't have that, like, there was like 2 times, and in 4th grade, my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Falope, I remember you, I forgot my homework once in October, and then I forgot it again in, like, May, and she called my mother in for a conference to make sure that everything was good at home, and I was it was literally, like, a one-sheet thing of homework each time. Like, it wasn't like I had not turned in an enormous book report or something crazy. Just ridiculous. So, obviously, I'll unpack that next week at therapy, but...
just gonna file that one away.
But, yeah, for the symptoms that I found for hyperactive is talks excessively, blurts out answers before questions have been completed, and difficulty waiting or taking turns, and interrupts. And my ex, one of his big pet peeves about me was that I constantly interrupted him while he was talking.
And I just don't know what he's talking about.
And then we hung out with my extended family at some point, and he was like, "Oh, your whole family does that. Now I know where you get it from." And I was like, well, I never really noticed it
First of all, rude.
But then once he said it, I was like, oh, yeah, we all interrupt. So then I was like looking at those, and I was like, oh, I definitely have a lot of hyperactive.
Yeah, I definitely was surprised. Because, like, if I mean, just description based alone, I'm like, oh, inattentive, 100%.
Right.
I'm scatterbrained. I'm just, I usually refer to as squirrel brain. Just,
yes.
My attention span is short and fleeting, and I gotta take advantage of it when I have it. And I read the hyperactive, and I was like, oh, I'm a little restless.
Yeah.
I have a hard time sitting still sometimes. And we actually will do an episode where we talk about, I think that's actually one of the ones I'll be covering, excessive activity, that restlessness. There was actually a term that I found for it that I'm sure will come up at some point, and I can't find it right now, that I thought was it was such a great buzzword that I forgot it. So, also, completely on brand with the rest of this. So, yeah, I thought that was very interesting. They did say, there was an NPR article that I read, and they were talking about the frequency of diagnoses in people in their 50s and 60s like now, and they also said that adults are being diagnosed now because their kids are being diagnosed.
I saw that. And because then they're trying to, like, do early interventions for their children, and they're like, oh, crap, I do this exact same thing.
Like, okay, let me see these symptoms. I'm feeling a little attacked. And that's kind of how this has been. I'm reading through it. I'm like, oh, wow.
Which is great now in 2022, because as an adult with the diagnosis, I feel like there are a lot more resources available to us so that we can at least have a better understanding of ourselves, which
totally
is kind of why we're here.
Yes. This is a
welcome,
journey
listener.
of self-discovery. Did we not mention that before? We are in therapy, but also utilizing this as a form of therapy.
Yeah. We're not in therapy together yet, but, I'm sure that'll come.
That's probably what this is just going to evolve into. Our therapist coming in, look, guys.
You got to start paying me.
I'm going to need a salary. This is too much. They did say, also in that article, that NPR article, if a parent has an ADHD, really, I mean, the number of people that have it that aren't diagnosed, I'm sure, is, like, off the charts.
Yes.
But they said if a parent has ADHD, there's a 50-50 chance the child will. I know I definitely have a genetic component to mine.
Same.
And they were, I mean, I read some stats said 10% of kids, some said as much as 15% of kids are being diagnosed with ADHD now, like regularly. So one of the things I thought was interesting that was clarified in a lot of the informational things that I was reading, a lot of the, not FAQs, but, like an introduction to ADHD, they were stating that it's not really that you have a deficit of attention, which is kind of what the name implies, but they said it's more difficulty regulating your attention and shifting attention and then being able to go back to what you were working on. I know that gets me a lot. I'll get sidetracked with something, even if it's work-related, for example, something else I have to do. I have a really hard time, like, finding what my train of thought was in the thing I was working on before that.
Which brings us to today's topic of
Yes.
focus
Oh, yes.
and multitasking.
Speaking of, that would be the title of, yes, today's hallmark symptom that we're focusing on, ironically, is poor focus and difficulties multitasking. Which really, like, you think about things like distractibility. I mean, really, when people are, like, describing ADHD, that's, like, number one, is distractibility.
So one of the sources that I looked at was chad.org. It's
also a great resource.
CHADD.org. And I think it's .org.
I didn't put that part, I just put Chad.
But they were discussing multitasking with ADHD in one of the articles on their website. And they discussed how, like, in the 1990s and early 2000s, there was, like, this wave of importance that was put on the ability to multitask. So as part of that was just the proliferation of computers in the workplace and email, and then the constant connectivity that's BlackBerries back then, and then Sidekicks, and then ultimately, like, iPhone and true smartphone technology caused, in the business world, job spill, where you're never actually off the clock because you're always answering emails. But it turned into this, like, oh, are you a good multitasker?
And productivity expectations also being way higher, like, every year increasing.
Because of this multitasking expectation where if you can always answer an email, you can always answer your phone, we can always get in touch with you, then you're always able to be interrupted. And so it was talking about how, although that was turned into this amazing quality that people are, like, striving to have. I mean, think of every job interview you've ever been on. Is that not something that you've highlighted? Oh, I'm so good at multitasking.
I think I actually stopped mentioning that as a strength because it is a falsehood. I am not good. It's like that Ron Swanson quote, you know, he says, like, why half-ass two things when you can whole-ass one thing? Like,
yes.
I only want a whole-ass.
Which was effectively, so Stanford did a study that compared high media multitaskers with low media multitaskers. So they didn't actually.
So what would be the difference between those two? Like what?
Well, first of all, this study did not differentiate between people who had ADD and people who didn't.
Okay.
But high media multitaskers are people who have their phone on them all the time. They have the desktop alerts for their work email.
Oh God, I'm stressed out just thinking about it.
I mean, effectively, and to be fair, I don't know what year the study was done, but kind of how we live our lives right now, like, but those high media multitaskers who will get interrupted by a news alert coming across their desktop or an email, and then they stop what they're doing to address the email because it's just a quick question. And then, you know, if you have to pull in a file from somewhere, if you have to go online to get to, like, a cloud service to get your whatever it is to reply to that email, then, you know, they basically said that people who had high media multitaskers had a harder time getting back on task. It took them longer to get back on track, whereas low media multitaskers are folks where you're working and you're doing your thing, and then a person physically comes up to you and interrupts you. And those folks had a much easier time getting back on track because the distraction left their area once it was handled. Whereas if you're on a computer all day, like most of us are at work, there's no walking away from the distraction.
Totally.
You exist within the distraction.
And the expectation, too, is, you know, if you're sitting at your computer, that you are paying. I mean, I have a tendency to get very involved. I'm also, like, you know, when you have things like shared mailboxes and things where you get notifications that aren't necessarily for you, I, unfortunately, am at the point where a lot of the times I just tune out notifications like that because...
I know, I've tried to message you before.
She has many times tried to message me, and I won't see it for an hour and a half. Because I, again, and one of the things they mention a lot when you read about ADHD is you can focus on nothing or you can hyper-focus on one thing. So sometimes when I am feeling pressure because of potentially poor time management, which will be another episode, I will then hyper-focus and pretend nothing else in the world is happening, including things like having to pee or get myself water or move an inch from where I'm sitting, I have a tendency to really vastly shift between those two modes where I can do nothing or I can only do everything all day. And it is sometimes unpleasant.
Yeah. And the Stanford study actually said that folks who are high media people, they concluded that they, quote, may be sacrificing performance on the primary task to let in other sources of information.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really a conclusion in that sense of who's better or worse other than the low media people. And I think their recommendation at the end of that was to, like, turn off notifications on your phone or go into do not disturb mode or whatever. But then the same website mentioned this other study that was done that compared multitasking between people with ADHD and neuronormal people. Mm-hmm. And that study found that people with ADHD kind of have a superpower, finding that although all participants performed the same in that they performed poorly with completing the tasks, the adults with ADHD were actually less likely to be stressed out by the interruptions and maintained they maintained a more positive attitude about their work even when they were interrupted, which I definitely feel like I do. I am toxically optimistic.
Yes, I can confirm. There have been times where I, who tend to, if this is a scale, I would say I'm probably in the middle, maybe slightly pessimistic. Not pessimistic. I think I'm realistic. I think I try not to let my
You're on the pessimistic side of realism.
Yes, I would. Yes. Yes, Katie is very optimistic. We actually earlier were having a conversation where we described her as jazz hands. That's the level of excitement and optimism we were talking about.
Like Linda Belcha.
Yes. I am on the opposite end of that spectrum.
Yeah, you're Bob.
Yes, I am the dry to balance out. Not the wet. We're not going to say the wet. I'm the dry to balance out the...
You come up with the name of the burgers.
That I could
and I come up with the musical routines.
Yes. And the distractions.
And the distractions.
Yes. I did think it was interesting that it really isn't, because I have a tendency to, another thing we were talking about earlier, I really beat myself up. I'm like, man, I just, we've been thinking about this so much lately because we've been doing research for this podcast and planning this podcast, really kind of in those symptoms and thinking about the symptoms and talking about the symptoms. And I've been so frustrated with myself. Like, man, why can't you just focus on one thing for 10 minutes? I just want 10 or 15 minutes of solid where my brain isn't constantly, it's letting go of the wheel and the car starts to drift to the side. It's just, it's frustrating sometimes. And that was one of the things that came up a lot was, that people do have a feeling of inadequacy and failure, but ultimately it's a deficiency of neurotransmitters.
Which I had no idea.
Yeah, I did not know that there was really, they were saying it's just the exchange between dopamine and norepinephrine. So the dopamine being things that interest you, and the dopamine or the norepinephrine being executive functions like time management. It totally makes sense why those symptoms we're talking about today, this poor focus and this difficulty, or I guess baseline of multitasking, maybe not difficulty all the time, but it really like comes down to these two things not being transmitted correctly in your brain.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, ADHD can either, or both, be an issue with your brain not sending enough of those dopamine or norepinephrine neurons, or the receiving neuron not accepting those
right
appropriately or enough
to keep them in balance.
Right. Or the sending neuron can also, like, I guess there's some sort of mechanism where, like, if it sends out too much, which I feel like I can best relate it to, like, adrenaline. Mm-hmm. Like, if your body produces so much adrenaline and then it has nowhere to go, mm-hmm. then those neurons that produce that adrenaline that hasn't been received by another neurotransmitter in your brain will suck it back up. Like, oh, sorry, just put that back in the cupboard.
I mean, to be honest, I wish that was a skill that I also had.
Sucking stuff up?
Yeah, sucking stuff up, just like a Hoover.
I mean, ask PK. I'm told I'm good at it. Sorry, Mom.
Rumor has it. I apologize on Katie's behalf. That was vulgar. One of the things I did see mentioned a lot also with, some of these signs of poor focus and, trouble multitasking was the mention of fatigue and, like, the impact that has on alertness. And sometimes they said, like, fidgeting and sitting still, like, you're trying to keep yourself awake and alert. I know, like, as a kid, I would be focusing so hard all day in school, trying to keep myself, like, on task, that by the time I got home, I was, like, zapped. Like, I did not want to do homework. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to, like...
My mom has a ton of pictures of me as a teenager, passed the fuck out on the couch. Like, completely sprawled,
Starfish.
like, dog on top... Golden retriever on top of me. Not even, like, a small dog. Dog on me, blanket everywhere, like, completely out cold.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. That's probably what it was.
Turns out.
It's probably from all that focusing I did. And being disruptive.
Yes. It turns out being disruptive.
Takes a lot out of me.
It is exhausting. Yeah, I definitely... I mean, I notice it now. There, if I have to really... When I hyper-focus, when I have those days where I'm hyper-focusing all day, I'm, like, dead. I get home and I'm like, well, I just need to, like, unplug myself and put myself on the charging station and leave myself there overnight. And I can come back in the morning. I just get to the point where I'm, like, flatlined. And I definitely notice, when I'm tired and if I haven't slept well. And, fatigue. I feel like ADHD kind of lends itself to making, like, dumb mistakes.
That was actually what... that's what really inspired me to talk to my doctor about getting diagnosed, because I found that I was making silly mistakes that at my job that were just irritating me, because there was no reason for me to be making different mistakes, like leaving a couple boxes blank on a form. That's the cover sheet to everything I do, and it was idiotic. I mean, nothing got damaged or anything by it. Like, it's a stupid mistake, no harm, no foul, but
I hate it.
Right. Well, and it kind of goes back to, like, an element of perfectionism. I think that being undiagnosed as a child, I think we kind of learned, like, okay, if I just do it perfect, then I don't have to do it again. And I don't have to deal with my stupid dopamine not kicking in.
Yes.
And getting bored. And so if I just do it perfect the first time, so then it goes into that horribly negative self-talk where it was like, wow, I'm such an idiot. Like, what kind of moron can't fill out this form? Yes. Like, I am 34 years old. I shouldn't be struggling with basic reading skills.
I can read.
So it was like that kind of frustration.
I'm a doctor of words.
Yeah, I'm a word doctor. They come to me when they're sick.
Sick with the law.
Prescription eraser. But yeah, so that was part of why I talked to my doctor about it, because I was like, this is just ridiculous. Like, and if there is a solution to it that can be solved with medication, I want that solution, because at this point in my career, like, in order for me to advance, I need to not be making those mistakes.
Has time for this. No,
and I mean, it's totally, I mean, for me, medication has been great. But yeah, there are those moments where, like, even now as a medicated person, I'll go home some days and I am completely wiped out. Like, which is why my dietitian tells me to meal prep so that I don't get too tired to cook.
Because that's the worst feeling. Like, and sometimes it does just, like, wipe you out to the point where it's, like, basic functions are, I mean, I will hyper-focus and forget and recognize at some point consciously, oh, man, I gotta pee. I gotta go to the bathroom.
Yes.
Let me just do X first, and then 20 minutes later, I'm like, oh, my God, I have to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, we're running.
I worked till 5:30 on Tuesday because I was like, I texted BK and I was like, Because I'll usually call him when I get home from work, and I was like, hey, I'm just working a little bit late tonight because I'm really on a roll. Yes. And then, like, I got up, and I was like, I gotta pee before I get home. I live 7 minutes from the office, and I was like, I can't hold it. I gotta pee.
If I don't pee in this disgusting bathroom.
But I was on a roll, and it was that kind of thing that, like, especially with ADHD, it's like, if I know, I cannot interrupt this.
Yeah, it's, as someone who is raw dogging ADHD and anxiety, don't know that I recommend it. But I will say when the multitasking is working just right, which every now and then the stars align, the moon is in Scorpion.
Oh, actually, I read something about when multitasking is good.
Yes.
And when people are good at it. It's when their tasks are familiar and very similar to each other.
100%. Like, cleaning is the number one thing I think of, or, like, if I'm out in the garden. So if I have to be home by myself, and I will have music playing, and I go on a roll, and I am cleaning 50 different things at one time, because I start cleaning one thing, I look and see something else, I put down what I'm doing, I do that thing, and eventually I circle back and everything does get done. But I don't feel pressure because there's no expectation, there's no timestamp on anything. I'm doing this in my own time. They are tasks that are familiar, and it's comforting to me. I enjoy cleaning. I'm one of those people. Katie will be covering the disorganization episode.
Why, though?
I am another spectrum where I am on the opposite end of, but that is one of the ways I cope with the ADHD symptoms is over-organizing. Not to say everything in my house is organized, because it's not. But generally that's...
It's more organized than my house.
That's one of the things that I use. That's one of my tools that I use. And I definitely, when I am home and just on a roll, and it's like everything is hitting just right.
That's why I love listening to podcasts, because it is interesting to me, for the most part. I don't listen to podcasts that are boring.
Why would you?
But it's usually something that I can do, and the episodes that are like an hour long, that's like a perfect amount of time for me to clean my entire apartment, put everything away that I need to put away, get all my dishes done, and like then once I sit down, I can just sit down. The trick is, people, never ever sit down.
Don't sit down.
When you're on a tear, don't sit down.
Don't sit down.
That's the devil speaking.
Don't answer a text message.
Yeah.
Don't check a notification.
Yeah.
It is literally like the temptation of Satan.
Yes.
Satan is trying to distract you from this beautiful, messy multitasking that is happening in your own world.
Both headphones in.
Yes.
Both earbuds in. Podcast on. Preferably this one.
This one.
And
don't you want us in your ear holes?
Vacuum the hell out of your place. Yes. Vacuum. Dust everything.
Cleaning the counters.
Tidying.
That is, I would say, my number one tool for dealing with, if we're talking coping with poor focus and multitasking, for good or for evil, I 100%, if I wake up on a Saturday morning and the whole week's bullshit has accumulated of just random items that haven't been put back where they live, typically my kitchen table, I immediately am in a bad mood. I'm like, oh,
see, I don't mind that waiting till Saturday morning, but I have warned PK if he comes over, because normally we hang out on Wednesdays, but if he comes over on a Friday, which does sometimes happen, he gets what he gets, and he gets to deal with it.
Yes.
My apartment will not be clean, and he constantly says, he's very sweet, but he constantly says, like, what makes you think I care? Which I feel like is the case for most guys.
Yes. Which never makes me feel better.
It doesn't make me feel better.
You're not telling me it's not like that, which I don't want you to tell me, because I don't want you to lie to me.
That's true, yeah.
But I also don't want you to be honest with me and tell me that you don't care, because I also want you to care.
I will say that, generally speaking, it's never filth that's all over the place. No, it's just disorganization.
It's just like something I put down that I didn't put back where it goes.
My sweater, like I'll get home from work and like throw it on the back of a chair.
Yes.
And it lives there until
at least a week.
Yes.
Until I can't find it all the other places it's supposed to be.
Yes.
So I definitely will constantly, it's funny because, sometimes my husband is traveling for work. He'll be gone for a week. And while he's gone, everything is spotless. I'm just doing things and immediately putting them away. And this is going to sound corny as hell, but every time I do something like that I put something away right when I use it, I think to myself, this is a little gift that I'm giving to future Garrett, that she is not going to have to put this away for me, because past Garrett didn't give a shit. So I am constantly putting things away, and then he gets home, and like 2 days later, I wake up on a Saturday morning, and I practically hyperventilate walking in my kitchen because there's shit everywhere. So I will remind him.
I'm acting out!
Yes! It's been something, sometimes my husband and I will say to each other when there are demands for pay attention to me, which is usually abbreviated to PATM, and there is I'm acting out. Because, I mean, usually it's not, one of us is not getting attention, but there's a reason that one of us is acting out. I tend to act out because things are cluttered, and it's not my clutter, but I still have to look at it with my eyeballs.
I mean, it's not the most unreasonable thing I've heard.
No, there was a lot more unreasonable things that happened today, and we want to rage, but we're not going to, because we're going to keep this.
We can rage before we do the happy news and meme of the week.
Yeah, we can do that. I feel like we did a nice coverage of some of the foibles that come with poor focus. It is ultimately exhausting and exasperating, and medicate if you need to, or raw dog it and be tired all the time like me.
Yes, we support you either way.
Either way.
As long as you support us and keep listening.
Choose your adventure, but also like, subscribe.
Yeah, make sure you like and subscribe. Give us those 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts especially. That's the best way to help us out, to get us more exposure so that we can keep bringing you more hot goss and hot takes. But yeah, so we are filming this in June of 2022. And we're aware that that is 69 days before you're going to hear this. But what happened today was that the Supreme Court overruled Roe v. Wade, thereby invalidating a woman's right to choose prior to the point of fetus viability outside the womb. The decision ultimately came down to saying it's a states' rights issue. I am an attorney. I have started reading the decision. The decision is 213 pages long, so I am currently on page 26.
She is crushing it. I'm not saying that sarcastically. That was actually genuine.
But in those first 26 pages, once you get past the syllabus, which is like a summary of the fucking case, but like they make it almost harder to read than the actual case. It's annoying. Con law sucks. But in the pages that I have read of it so far, Justice Alito, who wrote the majority opinion, spends a lot of time discussing the history of the word liberty in our jurisprudence, and is going back to cases and treatises from the 1700s to justify why an abortion is a crime and when an abortion became a crime, like at what point during the gestational period it became a crime. There's a lot of talk so far about the phrase quickening, like a pre-quickening abortion or a post-quickening abortion. Quickening, you'll probably know this by the time you hear this, but it's just when a woman can first feel the fetus kick or move inside of her. Generally, that happens sometime between weeks 16 and 20. I think most women report feeling it. My understanding as a person who's never been pregnant or tried so far, is that the first few times that you think you might be feeling the kicking, it kind of just feels like you're farting or something. Like it just feels like weird gas. Mm-hmm. So the idea that we're using such a bizarre metric to evaluate whether or not it is a crime to have an abortion is
all that
just
science out there. But let's rely
on...
And
they do spend some time calling it like a great moral quandary, which is an interesting way to avoid discussing a woman's autonomy, because they've effectively completely removed the woman from the equation. And they also spent a lot of time saying how it is not a gender-based discrimination, even though the law specifically can only affect people born with uteruses. The law, they do like some sort of phrasing to it, but basically because they'll strike down a law as being prejudicial to one sex over the other, or one gender over the other, if the law is basically pretending to apply to everyone, but only applies to one sex over the other. So that's basically what they're saying. They're saying in this case, it's not about they tie themselves into a pretzel, in my opinion, to do this. They basically say that the law limiting abortions and criminalizing abortions after a certain point isn't about punishing the mother, but it's about protecting the fetus. And so that's how basically they get around it. But it's just nonsense to me that they're discussing and I think conflating a viable fetus that can exist outside the womb on its own, which with modern science is becoming sooner and sooner. I mean, just look at the Duggars. They had that kid at like 18 weeks and that kid's alive. I could be wrong. I mean, it might be like 20 weeks, but
where's our fact checker? I'd just like to add, while we're having this heavy conversation, that Katie bought us these delightful cans of beer to drink while we record. And we're going to post a picture on Instagram. The can's adorable. 10 out of 10 on design.
The name of the beer is hysterical.
Hysterical. Really, presentation is excellent. I don't know how big a fan I am of the taste.
Garrett, it turns out, does not like New England-style IPAs.
Yeah, I'm not big on IPAs, and every time I take a sip, I'm twisting my face up, and every time Katie goes, "You don't have to drink it." And then I kind of laugh, and then 5 minutes later I take another sip, and then I make the same face, and then she tells me I don't have to drink it. So she just reminded me again that I really don't have to drink it. I'm probably going to take another sip, and I'm going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. So yes, continue. We were talking about the Duggar.
Yeah, so we were talking about the viability of a fetus. So their youngest daughter, Josie, was born at 25 weeks and weighed 1 pound 6 ounces when she was born.
That's wild.
And she was born on my birthday, December 10th.
She was supposed to be born much later.
Yeah, she was supposed to be born in like fucking April or whatever.
That's crazy.
Whatever the fuck is 25 plus 15. Yeah, 4 months after December. I don't know.
There's no math on the bars ankle high. That's one of the rules. It's like Fight Club, but there's no math allowed.
Yeah, the number one rule of the bar is ankle high is we don't talk about math.
There's no math.
Or we don't do it anyway.
We don't do it.
We might talk about it.
But we won't do it while recording. I know my husband has a policy of he won't do math in public. And I'm going to apply that same rule to this.
This is public, as long as people listen.
Yep. And another spoiler alert, we will not be doing math. That's the number one rule.
But, yeah, so the decision that came out of the Supreme Court today has us screeching. It has me screeching a lot also because in the parts that I've read, there's a significant discussion about the congressional debate surrounding the 14th Amendment, which preserved folks' rights to due process, it was the focus of Roe v. Wade. I mean, Roe v. Wade was upheld on a question of due process rights, among other things, and this decision, even if Ruth Bader Ginsburg had retired from the court, this decision would not have been written this way if she was still alive, I think. It is so offensive to Roe and Casey. It regularly says throughout this opinion that, like the line I'm currently looking at says, Roe either ignored or misstated this history, and Casey declined to reconsider Roe's faulty historical analysis. And it is therefore important to set the record straight.
God knows 50 years later. How many years? 50?
50.
50?
Yeah, 49.
49. We better take care of this, because that's a hot topic.
I guess discussing the merits of congressional debate surrounding the 14th Amendment when there was only 37 states in the Union, half of which rebelled.
Just to be clear, on this issue of states' rights, which I'm putting in quotes, states' rights.
Yes. I just think that providing so much leeway to people who owned other humans
and fought
as currency
for the desire to continue to own other people.
Yes. I just think that is such faulty rationale, and the idea that we have to analyze whether the folks who debated the 14th Amendment and what they thought the word liberty meant is such hot garbage.
To me, it's like whataboutism. It's like we're just going to mention all of these other topics, vague concepts.
Yes.
Patriotism, America, liberty, the right to bear arms.
Yes.
I mean, the fact that we're having these conversations about guns, which, you know, this Second Amendment was written when people were using muskets.
Yes.
There weren't even bullets yet. I mean, it's just like throwing these nebulous concepts out to distract from the core conversation, which is like, this is between me and my doctor. Well,
and these are clearly the conservative justices and the conservative parties within the U.S., they want to and have wanted and made it clear over the past decade, I'd say, made it clear that they want Supreme Court justices who are, quote, originalists, which is folks who interpret the Constitution and the amendments thereto in their original context, and that rather than viewing the Constitution as a, quote, living document, which is generally what more liberal justices do, where it's like, well, this, I think, a common sense approach where why on earth would I rely on a document written in 1732 and their evaluation of an abortion and the legality thereof, when in 1732 they didn't even have fucking toilet paper.
Right.
Like, why would I consider their concept of... Because, again, also, in that time, the best that they could do is, like, ooh, maybe take this tea, this witch hazel tea, and see if that upsets your stomach enough to, quote-unquote, cause a miscarriage. That's effectively what you're doing. You're trying to induce a miscarriage rather than a true abortion, like a medical D&C that we'd have today. Right. So I also think that in applying those standards, and these are also standards where it's like this, if you hit a woman and she was pregnant and caused the death of the fetus, then you'd be liable for homicide, which it's transferring the tort against the woman to a tort against the unborn child, the fetus. And as a person, which I can't say that I disagree with that idea, but I do think that the major difference for me in that situation is the mens rea, the mental culpability that you have and that intent that you have when you're entering into that act. If you strike somebody who's visibly pregnant and you cause them to miscarriage, or you cause them to have a stillbirth or whatever, then yeah, you are guilty of a crime. But a woman electing to terminate a pregnancy that is not wanted,
right,
just
or
for
not
this
viable.
Well, and the problem that I have is that the case that we're looking at, the Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. So the Mississippi law that they're evaluating bans abortions past 15 weeks. So still pretty standard, I think, for the most part. I think in New York, the limit is 20 weeks.
Yeah. A lot of the Northeast states seem to be like, between 20 and 22.
Yeah, which, unless life of the mother is at risk. Right. So, and in this, there's a carve-out for that as well. So unless the fetus is unviable outside the womb, won't live once you give birth, even if you carry it to term, or the life of the mother is at risk. So there are those exceptions. For now. I don't know if there's an exception for rape or incest. But, that being said, my issue, and as we were discussing before we went on air, is that it opens the door for these states like Oklahoma and Texas with these 6-week abortion bans, and Oklahoma, I believe it's Oklahoma, that is trying to persecute women who obtain an abortion legally in another state.
Wild.
I don't know how that won't get struck down by the Commerce Clause, but at this point, I feel like it's totally plausible that it's going to get upheld. Yeah. Because again, if you're turning this into a states' rights issue, then Oklahoma can do what Oklahoma wants to do. And, I'm pretty sure it's Mississippi. It could be Alabama. But one of them has, like, the highest teen pregnancy rate, but they refuse to accept federal funds for public assistance options because that would require them to teach sex ed in public schools, and they refuse to do that. And I just think that that's a theocracy, and we're not supposed to live in that.
No.
And
if we're going to talk originalist, the whole core issue was having a secular government.
And yet they exclusively, which it's history's written by the victors, but they're exclusively looking at historical documents written by Christians, based on Christian and Judeo-Christian.
No one wants these dusty old Christian rules from the days of yore. Like, we are not. Not only do I not want some old man making these, and apologies to the old man community, I don't want you making decisions about what I can do with my body.
Frankly,
I certainly
don't want young men doing it either.
Old men, young men, men. The thought that someone from hundreds of years ago who just wrote nonsense.
Imagine that.
Fucking nonsense.
In hundreds of years, people are going to be listening to this podcast, and they'll be like, you know what? They had a point.
You know what?
What about that gravy train?
We're going to write some rules about that.
These people write good songs. What's that thing about hot dogs? That woman loved hot dogs.
When were we talking about hot dogs?
The hot dogs will go on.
Oh, yeah. There was a thing about hot dogs.
If you guys didn't listen to our teasers, you
are missing out. There was some real impressive.
I did it to PK in the car yesterday, too. Yesterday was my anniversary with my boyfriend. Yeah, we did it. We made it a year.
Breaking up on tomorrow.
Yeah, we high-fived and went our separate ways.
That's pretty good. Let's leave it on a high note.
We were in the car on our way back because we went to this immersive Van Gogh experience, and I don't know, I can't remember what song it was at some point. But I was like, the song that's like, na 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 na, and I said the words, and he was like, yep, I do. And I was like, okay, and I'm like driving, so I'm at the light, and I'm like watching traffic, and he's like, do you know the actual words to that song?
No, why? Are you saying I'm wrong?
I was like, I'm pretty sure I said him right, and he's like, you didn't.
I'm pretty sure I got it right. So confident.
Yeah.
Confidence just hitting again.
Every time, and he's like, bless his heart, he's so nice to me when I'm an idiot.
You know that song, Gravy Train, by Ozzy Osbourne? And he was like,
well, Led Zeppelin.
Oh, that's right.
That Led Zeppelin song, going off the rails in a gravy train, right?
I can't tell you how bad I am at that. You know that game where, like, people... So, my spouse being a musical person, me not being a musical person, if you sing a song to me, you're like, you know that song? And you sing it, I go, no. 100% of the time, I have no idea what you're talking about. You can play it for me, be like, oh yeah, I know that song. Singing it to me? No. It's a complete waste of your time.
Unless you're on key. I'm the same.
I have
to be on key.
Whatever that game. What is that game? I don't remember what it's called, but there's that game where you...
Karaoke?
No. Oh. Name that tune, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Like where you sing part of it?
Yeah.
I have literally bowed out mid-game and been like, I'm resigning.
You know what I learned?
Because I'm so bad.
You know how there's Wordle?
Yeah, I've never played Wordle.
Oh, it's not bad.
I have missed
It's very high
Wordle.
Stress.
That sounds
because
like
it tells you your streak at the end. So if you miss it, then it goes back to 0, which is disappointing. But
and I'm also not good at Jumble, so this is the worst possible game for me.
Oh, I like it. I love a good puzzle.
That and Name That Tune, Wordle and Name That Tune would.
Well, there's one called Hurdle, like HEARDLE.
And you're gonna hurt at the end of it.
And it plays like 30 seconds of a song, and you like pause it when you know the song, and you can like search for the song and the artist. And today's was Pony by Genuine. I got it in less than a second.
Genuine?
I got it in less than a second. I was so proud.
Just like smashing the button.
Yeah, it was great.
Genuine. Also, I hope you guys have watched Parks and Rec because it gets referenced a lot.
That's fair.
So things that we have coming up. We have our first 3 episodes. You'll be listening to this on September 1st. We've got some other exciting episodes that'll be coming out. Like we said, we're going to be doing this multi-part series covering different symptoms of ADHD. And I'm sure along the way, too, we're also going to find some other things we'd like to cover in regards to that, which we'll keep you guys posted on. We'll keep you in the loop.
Yeah, and you can also email us your topic suggestions if there's a topic that you'd like us to cover.
Totally.
Our email address is thebarisAnkleHigh@gmail.com, and there's also a form on our website that you can fill out, which is thebarisAnkleHigh.com. On our website as well, you can find links to our Patreon, our Instagram. There's also a merch tab if you want to get dope-ass sticker, like the kind I just threw at Garrett.
Oh, we can't wait to post them so you can see them. Also, we just had our bird sonas done.
Yeah!
We will post those. It is truly a dream come true. If I couldn't have imagined a better version of me as a crow ever.
Yeah, so I was best friends with this delightfully talented artist in high school. Yes, Allison Dubois, not the medium.
Just to be clear.
But she's super talented, and we've, of course, stayed in touch over the years because, like, who wouldn't want to keep talking to me? And
so delightful.
Actually, one of my favorite stories about Allison I'll tell another time. But she came to visit me in college, and maybe we witnessed my roommate having sexy time with their boyfriend. While we were on the bottom bunk and they were on the top bunk.
Oh, no. Absolutely not.
Head on over and follow us on Instagram at @thebarsankleHigh, and you'll see our meme of the week, as well as a picture of our super cool beer cans Garrett hates.
Yes, our bird sonas. We'll show you those.
Yes, we'll also have our bird sonas. And let us know if you want our bird sonas on some merch for you, and we can maybe get that up before Black Friday.
Which is also mostly just us wanting our own bird sonas on things. But yeah, if you guys want it on merch, for sure.
I would literally crap my pants if I was out somewhere and saw somebody else with our merch who I didn't know and like forced to buy it.
Yeah, like if I saw one in the wild, I'm gonna amend that and say that if I see any of our merch in the wild, I'm sorry in advance because I will scream at you, and not like aggressively.
No, like a crow.
Pure excitement. Yes, actually, just like a crow that found a shiny trinket. That's what I will do at you.
Yeah.
Pure excitement, and then do that that head bob thing with the
like
with
a
the
pigeon.
wings flapping. Yeah. It'll be so cute.
I mean, Garrett's pretty cute, guys.
So cute.
But yeah, so we'll have our meme of the week. This week involves dinosaurs.
Love it! Oh my god,
it's a
I
little
love
dino
those
comic.
Can't wait for you to see the comic. It's so cute.
Make sure you're following us because we don't do Facebook or Twitter, so you have to follow us on Instagram.
Yeah, we're just gonna stick it to Instagram, I think. Facebook I abandoned years ago, and Twitter I'm afraid of.
We have a Facebook page that you can like, and I will take care of posting updates to that. But
I wish you could have seen the look that Katie just gave me of, like, exasperation. Like, yes, I'll take care of Facebook. I'm saying, like, thanks. I don't want to touch it.
I don't do that.
I don't do Facebook. Or Twitter, because I'm scared of Gen Z, I think.
Yeah, so Garrett manages our TikTok.
Which she also doesn't. And also because she's afraid of Gen Z. I'm just kidding, Gen Z. Like, do you? Very proud of you.
You're good at dancing. We weren't good at dancing.
You're better at dancing. I think you're a little bit more together than we were. Do your thing. I'm just a little afraid of you. It's just a healthy fear. I will just keep my distance. I will keep a respective distance.
Yeah, just like that. In the meantime, donate to your local abortion clinic.
Yes. Any access groups, especially down south and in the Midwest where they're going to be...
And we will post...
Oh, they lost it today?
Yeah, we'll post some resources to our Instagram page, both about ADHD and some of the sources that we use today, as well as resources for those seeking medical care without judgment and with honoring your privacy and your personal bodily autonomy. So we'll post those, and those will be on a highlight tab on our Instagram page as well. But yeah, in the meantime, I'm Katie.
And I'm Garrett.
And remember to vote.
Vote. And stick it to the man.
Because the bar is ankle high.
And fuck those guys.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll be here next Thursday with a brand new episode to delight your brain juices. Until then, the best way to support us is to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and like and subscribe wherever you listen. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Bar is Ankle High. And if you want to help us grow the podcast even more, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/thebarIsAnkleHigh. Patreons get exclusive Patreon-only episodes, monthly horoscopes written by yours truly, and access to our secret members-only Facebook group, as well as added to our close friends list on Instagram. We have a lot of fun over there, and we would love for you to join us. Until next week, remember to be kind to yourself, because the bar is ankle high.